So when you think about hybrids, you definitely think about the Toyota Prius. But when you think about driving in the snow or driving in the north, you definitely don't think about the Toyota Prius, and that's something that Toyota is looking to change. So we are here in Kohler, Wisconsin with the new 2019 Toyota Prius all-wheel drive E. We're gonna go hit some snowy hills with it, we're gonna take it on a road loop, and I will tell you if this all-wheel drive system is really worth the money. Mechanical changes to the Prius for 2019, this thing also looks different now, and what Toyota actually did compared to the 2018 is they got rid of a lot of the angles. When they brought out this new generation Prius, it was very angular, kind of a polarizing look to be honest, and I think this 2019 they tried to solve some of those really sharp lines with a lot more smoother lines. The headlights are different, the front fascia is different, the fog lights are different. Same thing in the rear end. Rather than those long vertical tail lights, they have these much smaller horizontal tail lights, and it just gives this thing, I think, a little more of a cohesive look. I still don't really love the way it looks. It's definitely an acquired taste, but you know what, I'll at least give Toyota credit for designing its cars. You know, you can't argue that this Prius does have quite a unique design to it, and whether you like it or not, I think it's something that Toyota is doing much better these days rather than just putting out, you know, boring old blobby cars. So the other thing that changed for 2019 isn't just the exterior, but also the interior. Toyota got a lot of feedback on the new Prius interior, and the one thing they did away with, which I think everybody is thankful for, is all the white plastic that they put in this thing. For some reason, the Prius got filled up with this white plastic. It looked, in my opinion, really cheap. Obviously, nobody liked it because it's entirely gone, and they've replaced it with black. But black, of course, looks premium. In this XLE model we're in right here, it's this nice sort of gloss black look. In some models it's more of a matte black, but anyways, that's a, you know, it's a nice styling touch in here. And then a few other little things just to make the interior more livable. They moved the buttons for the heated seats. They used to be kind of buried up under the dash. They moved them back and put them in a much more open area. Of course, appreciated in an all-wheel drive car because you probably live in a place where it's cold. And then this is the big thing with Toyota, is they don't love USB ports. A lot of their vehicles aren't filled with USB ports, and this Prius just got 2 more. So now I got 1 in the front and I have 2 USB ports in the rear. So the other big difference for 2019 with the Prius is they're changing all the trim names. So before, all the Prii, and yes, the plural of Prius is Prii, all the Prii were 1 through 4. So you got a Prius 1, a Prius 2, a Prius 3, a Prius 4, and the lower number was less content, the higher number was more content. Well, now they're moving just to the typical Toyota trim walk. So now the Prius goes, you start at the L Eco, then to the Prius LE, then the Prius XLE, and then finally the Prius Limited on the top. And this all-wheel drive model is only going to be offered on 2 of the 4 trims, and those are the middle trims. So you can get a LE all-wheel drive and an XLE all-wheel drive, but if you want sort of the base model or the most expensive, most loaded up model, you can't get them with all-wheel drive. So we'll get into that rear electric motor a little more in a second, but the rest of the powertrain here in the Prius stays the same. It's still a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine, and total hybrid system output is rated at 121 horsepower and 105 pound-feet of torque. Now, the rear electric engine adds 7.1 horsepower, but the thing is, it only operates up to 44 miles per hour, 70 kilometers an hour, so it doesn't actually add to the total system output. Now, the rear motor also adds about 40 pound-feet of torque, but interestingly, Toyota says that this all-wheel drive model is probably a little slower from 0 to 60 because of the added weight. The weight of this all-wheel drive system is somewhere between 140 and 170 pounds extra over a regular Prius, depending on which trim you get. The other interesting choice is that the all-wheel drive models will use nickel metal hydride batteries, whereas the rest of the Prius lineup will still use lithium ion, and according to Toyota, that's just because of cold temperature performance. Apparently nickel metal hydride still does better when it gets frigid out. And in typical Prius fashion, to make sure this thing is as efficient as possible, the new rear motor back there, it actually has no magnets in it. So when it's not being used, it's not creating excess drag. And all of that comes together to give this car a fuel economy rating of 50 miles per gallon, which is just 2 miles per gallon worse than a non-all-wheel drive model. So it's not really a big hit in fuel economy if you do want to be able to power all 4 wheels. But that's enough talking. Let's get out there and hit the snow course and see how this all-wheel drive actually works. Okay guys, so we're just taking off here in the new all-wheel drive E Prius. And we're in Kohler, Wisconsin, and sadly there's no natural snow, but Toyota actually made some snow, and we got a little snow course here. Now, what we're doing right now is we're about to come up to a 6% grade. I'm gonna come to a full stop and accelerate and see how the all-wheel drive does at getting us going on this hill. Now, this all-wheel drive system is really designed for these slow speeds. It will kick in full time from 0 to 6 miles per hour. So from 0 to 6, the rear engine is working regardless of slip, it goes. So now we're gonna take my foot off the brake to the gas and see if we can gently accelerate up this hill. Nice, that actually feels pretty good. I mean, if that was a front wheel drive Prius, there's no doubt there would have been more wheel spin there, and that was almost no wheel spin at all. So the other thing worth mentioning is that Toyota didn't decide to put any kind of snow tires on these cars we're testing or on the cars they're going to sell. The all-wheel drive Prius will come with these standard low rolling resistance tires. So out here in the snow, you know, they don't have a ton of grip, which is exactly when the all-wheel drive system really helps you. So the motor in the back runs from 0 to 6 miles per hour regardless of what's going on. Every single time you start, you're getting some rear wheel power. But then from 7 up to about 44 miles per hour, the system will only come on when slip is detected. So here's a little chicane course here. So I'm coming to a stop, I'm gonna take off, see if I can't spin the tires, that's full power, and see how it turns. And yeah, you know what? It's not plowing really because the rear drive is really helping to keep that grip. And it did seem like it sensed some slip there, but the rear drive did a beautiful job of keeping us really stable. So in terms of traction control here, the rear electric motor is sending its power to both rear wheels through essentially what is an open differential. And just like in a lot of their vehicles, Toyota uses brake-based traction control. So if they do sense slip, it'll just brake the one wheel and send power to the other. It's actually a really simple system back there. So we're here on this hill start again, and this time I'm gonna give her a little bit more power. Let's just see what happens. See, so there too, there was definitely more wheel spin when I laid into it, but you can feel that this thing is pushing you as well and not just pulling you through the snow. And that's what Toyota really focused on with this car. It's not about high-speed stability, it's all about just getting started. That little push off the line, and in the snow and ice and, you know, even heavy rain, that can really be an important thing. Okay guys, we're on the road now with this Prius all-wheel drive, and I'm just stopped in a parking lot because I just want to show you how the all-wheel drive system works off the line. And one thing Toyota is very good at doing is giving you options to be able to see how the power is being split. So I have a screen down here which tells me which motors are running and how the power is going, and then up here in the smaller screen I have basically a display which says which wheel is getting power. Now the all-wheel drive sends power to the rear wheels regardless under 6 miles per hour. So from 0 to 6, every single takeoff this thing is going to work, and then above 6 it'll only work if it senses slip. So just watch the little meter as I take off here and you'll see that the second it hits 6, those rear wheels lose their power. Check it out. And the funny thing is right there, if you watched it, it actually looked a little closer to 12 miles per hour. I'm sure that's just a fault of the screen not being able to catch up to actually what's going on back there. So to make it so efficient, that's why Toyota did the whole speed limited thing. Because, you know, quite frankly, once you're on the highway cruising at 60 miles an hour all-wheel drive isn't going to do that much for you. You know, the stability of a front-wheel drive vehicle at that kind of speed is pretty much equivalent to all-wheel drive. So Toyota basically said, we want the smallest engine possible to add the least amount of weight but get the most benefit, which is why you only get that little punch from 0 to 6 miles per hour. You get the all-wheel drive working regardless of the conditions, and then from 6 to 44 it basically sends a slip, and it has to be slippery, because right now I'm doing 39 miles per hour. If I at the accelerator, it still doesn't matter. It does not send power to the rear. So it's not even like when you ask for the power, it's going to send it. What you need is for there to be snow on the ground and slippage. So another conscious decision that Toyota made was to not put any type of all-wheel drive control in this car, meaning that as the driver, I can't turn the all-wheel drive on or off. There's no buttons in here for me. Basically, the car does all of the thinking for you. Now, let's just forget about the all-wheel drive for a second, and let me just talk to you about this Prius. You know what? First of all, I haven't been in a Prius in quite a while. You may or may not know that I'm normally on TFL Truck, driving trucks, so certainly the Prius is not right in my wheelhouse. But I have been in a number of Prii before, and more so than ever, this car is just smooth and quiet and comfortable. And I've actually been really impressed with the way it handles. You know, it's nice and fairly neutrally balanced, and you feel it. It doesn't roll through corners. It handles quite nicely. It has the battery packs down low in the car, so you do get that low center of gravity, which just adds to that feeling. The steering is really fake feeling, but again, it's super smooth, like velvety smooth, and that just adds to sort of the smooth, quiet nature of the car. And Toyota does give you drive modes. If you do want to drive a little more aggressively, you can put it into power mode, and in power you put your foot into it, and it's not bad. It's really not that quick. You do get a little punch off the line in power because you get a little more electricity going to the wheels, but do not buy a Prius and expect it to be a quick car. So another thing worth noting about this Prius is there's actually been an all-wheel drive Prius on sale in Japan for a couple of years now, and basically this is just that system imported here into North America. They didn't really make any changes to Americanize this car, and of course they could have done, you know, actual real mechanical all-wheel drive. They could have put a larger motor in the back with more horsepower, more torque, but the decision was to give consumers basically the least amount of all-wheel drive, essentially, kind of the most basic all-wheel drive system, because that is what gives you the best fuel economy and keeps price down as well, which is of course a very important factor in this car. The other fairly impressive thing with the car is just the packaging. Toyota managed to add all-wheel drive, but there is no loss in cargo space. The rear seat is the same size, so basically you're not really giving up very much to get this system. So as I mentioned, Toyota could have definitely done more with the system. You know, they could have added torque vectoring and all kinds of different things. But the avenue that they went down also keeps it cheap. So the all-wheel drive model is a $1,400 jump over the regular two trims. And again, you can get an LE all-wheel drive and an XLE all-wheel drive. And for that rear motor, $1,400 to me seems like a pretty good deal. And actually that $1,400 jump only applies to the LE model. The XLE, the more upgraded model, it's only $1,000 to get the all-wheel drive. So what are those prices? Well, the base 2019 Prius L Eco non-all-wheel drive costs $23,770. That's the cheapest Prius you can buy. Now, bumping up to the LE, you're looking at $24,980. The XLE sells for $27,820, and a top-of-the-line limited Prius sells for $32,200, and these are all US prices. Now, of course, what about the all-wheel drive? Well, the LE all-wheel drive sells for $26,380. So $26,380 is the cheapest all-wheel drive Prius you can buy. And then if you want the upgraded XLE model with all-wheel drive, you're looking at $28,820. So the other thing Toyota has done with the hybrid system is really set themselves apart. None of the cars in the competitive set have all-wheel drive except for this one right here. Cars like the Honda Insight, the Hyundai Ioniq, none of them have all-wheel drive. So if you want an all-wheel drive hybrid, a small car, you pretty much have to come to the Prius. So all that being said, I think the one argument against why you might get all-wheel drive in this car is snow tires. And yes, I recognize that with snow tires and all-wheel drive, this thing's gonna be really great coming off the line in the winter. But the truth is, front-wheel drive cars with a really good set of snow tires already do pretty good in the wintertime. So I think it really depends on where you live and how much winter you're dealing with, how much you plan on driving in the snow. Because if you did want to save the money, you'd probably be still pretty well served with just a great set of winter tires on this car. So is it worth it? I think it is. I think Toyota kind of nailed it with this, actually. $1,400 really isn't a big bump up to get all-wheel drive. And the benefit is there. If you live in a snowy place and you're worried about, you know, getting stuck and getting moving, this can make a big difference. And you know, if you do drive to really snowy places, let's say you have a cottage or a cabin, all-wheel drive can actually be the difference sometimes between getting in or getting stuck. So, you know, adding it to this car does make a considerable difference, I think. And I think Toyota nailed the packaging. And if they had have done, you know, mechanical all-wheel drive, or if they had have really tried to make the all-wheel drive system something more, it would have gotten too expensive and too heavy, and then you wouldn't get the fuel economy benefit either. So they really kind of found that balance. I think it's the right balance. 50 miles per gallon for this car is still, you know, very impressive. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And if you've been considering a Prius, look at the all-wheel drive model, no doubt. Toyota says that this Prius with all-wheel drive will hit dealerships in January of 2019, and they predict that 25% of North American Prius sales are going to have this all-wheel drive system. And for good reason, because frankly, if you do want a small hybrid with all-wheel drive, this is the only car that offers it. Now sure, maybe it could be a slightly more robust all-wheel drive system, but if you live somewhere where the winters are long and cold, there's no doubt that this thing is going to take a lot of stress out of your daily commute. So as always, guys, make sure you hit subscribe to TFL Car and come right back here for the latest news, views, and real-world reviews. See ya.